Do you want a sword, Thorfinn? A sword is a tool meant to kill. Why do you need it? Whose life do you intend to take?
Enemies.
Your enemies? Who are they?
Well, bad guys like Halfdan.
Listen to me, my son. You don't have enemies. The truth is that nobody has them. Nobody in this entire world deserves to get hurt.
Vinland Saga was one of the greatest journeys I have gone on watching a TV show. My initial impression was that it was nothing more than Vikings fighting, more of an action-packed show that didn't contain much character development and story. What I ended up getting was one of the most thought-provoking and interesting pieces of media I've seen in the last 5 years. What makes Vinland Saga so amazing is its characters. First and foremost is Thorfinn. Thorfinn is our main character who starts out as any other child in the Viking world, seeking violence and war, as that's what all men did before him. However, after his father begins instilling pacifist ideals in him, Thorfinn questions the purpose of violence for a second. As he goes on a mission with his father, he witnesses his father be killed due to his refusal to kill another. Thorfinn's life begins to be consumed by revenge, hate, and violence, the three things his dad tried to get rid of in him. This is all directed against the man who killed his father, Askeladd. Askeladd is a seasoned Viking who was commissioned to kill Thors, Thorfinn's father. He sees potential in the young Thorfinn, who follows him in an attempt to avenge his father. Thorfinn refuses to simply lob off Askeladd's head in his sleep, however. He desires to kill Askeladd in a fair duel, proving that he is a worthy successor to his father. Askeladd abuses this to train Thorfinn to fight alongside him with the prospect of a duel. Thorfinn's life becomes consumed with his desire for revenge, living only to serve Askeladd for the promise of a duel. Askeladd wants Thorfinn to kill a general, promise him a duel after. Askeladd wants Thorfinn to scout out an area, only for a duel. Additionally, Thorfinn never wins these duels as Askeladd is the one who trained him. He knows how to beat him. We eventually learn that Askeladd is also someone who is seething with revenge. In particular, he sought out revenge for his mother when he was a child. Askeladd's slave mother was attacked by his father, who was a warlord. Askeladd defended her, and similarly to Thorfinn, was brought in by his father due to his potential. Unlike Thorfinn, Askeladd didn't have any integrity, killing his father in his sleep. Askeladd's revenge would go further than this, however, with him seeking revenge against the Scandinavians for the sake of his mother's home country of Wales. Askeladd's life is similarly heavily focused on revenge. However, unlike Thorfinn, it doesn't consume him. He can live separate from it, and he did for years. It was only as his prime years as a Viking were coming to a close that he did anything about it. In the final episodes of Vinland Saga, we see one person achieve their desired revenge, and one person fail. Askeladd kills King Sweyn of Denmark after Sweyn threatens Wales and insults his mother. After this, chaos ensues within the meeting place as everyone attempts to kill the man who just assassinated the king. Thorfinn, upon hearing of Askeladd's soonly arriving death, swoops in just to watch Askeladd be killed by Prince Canute. As the sword leaves Askeladd's heart, Thorfinn rushes to his side. Askeladd tells Thorfinn to kill him, but Thorfinn doesn't want that. It wouldn't be proper revenge if Thorfinn didn't duel with him. Askeladd then asks Thorfinn a question that would forever change his and several others' lives. I believe that this is the moment Thorfinn finally came to terms with the fact that this isn't what his father would have wanted. We see him acknowledge this earlier, but right here it seems to fully hit him that this life consumed with revenge is benefiting nobody. He feels no satisfaction watching Askeladd die, and he's disobeying his father's outlook on life. If Thorfinn is meant to have no enemies and hurt no one, then how did he get himself here? As Askeladd finally begins to lose consciousness, he asks Thorfinn a question of what he will do now that his life no longer exists to serve revenge. Before Thorfinn can respond, Askeladd tells him to venture forth and become a greater version of his father. This is the last thing Askeladd would ever say. Askeladd saw the potential in Thorfinn, and he saw the bitter revenge that it created. His skills as a warrior only led to violence. Violence for someone that Thorfinn hated. Askeladd wants Thorfinn to become who he wants to be, and to no longer serve anyone. To become a great warrior who makes his own decisions, like his father. As the dust settles, Canute apologizes to Thorfinn, but in a blind rage, Thorfinn slashes Canute's face. Thorfinn is immediately apprehended, and the understanding Canute allows him to live, but to be subjected to a life of slavery for attacking the new king. As Thorfinn is dragged away from Askeladd, he drops his dagger, a childhood of war and revenge all coming to a dramatic close. This is the ending of the first season of Vinland Saga, a season of the show almost entirely about revenge. Entering season 2 of the show, we open by watching a young man have his entire family killed and being sold into slavery. I expected to see another revenge-filled season, but I would argue that season 2 of Vinland Saga is about redemption. We can start with Thorfinn, as he is easily the greatest example of redemption. Thorfinn begins the season as a slave. He's apathetic and depressed, seeing no purpose to his life. Without Askeladd and without freedom, he no longer has anywhere to go or anything to look forward to. Despite Fox almost killing him, Thorfinn doesn't move a muscle, saying that nothing good has ever happened to him in his entire life. It seems Thorfinn is finally experiencing the negative effects of revenge and a lack of childhood. He's now realizing that his entire life was wasted on revenge. Revenge that the person he was avenging didn't even want. Thorfinn has no reason to live, but he's given one through Einar. Einar is the person whose entire family was killed. He works on the same farm as Thorfinn, and they both share relatively similar experiences. As they get closer, Thorfinn seems to become a little happier, having not only a companion, but a potential goal, with his freedom being at the cost of creating a successful farm. While Thorfinn had this goal before, it is much more possible with Einar. As freedom becomes more and more attainable, Thorfinn and Einar discuss what they will do with it. Thorfinn claims that nothing he does could possibly redeem him. He has killed far too many for anything to possibly have a positive impact on the world further than his negative. However, through Einar, they get the idea to begin a civilization in Vinland, a faraway place with no war or conflict. This is Thorfinn's redemption on the world. We see that Thorfinn is actually very committed to his ideas of pacifism, with him withstanding 100 punches just to meet with Canute to ask for peace. This scene is also the first time we hear Thorfinn say that he has no enemies, proving to the audience that he has come full circle, finally understanding what Thors told him on that fateful day. This comes nearly exactly a season after Askeladd asked him that pivotal question of whether or not they were enemies. In this scene, we can also see Thorfinn discussing how stupid it is to consider someone your enemy before you even know them. Discussing redemption further, we can talk about Gardar and Arnheid. Gardar was a man who lived in a small village with his wife Arnheid and child Hjalti. One day, the men of the village decided to go to war over practically nothing, simply because it was what people did at the time. The fight ended with Gardar's village losing, leading to him and Arnheid being sold to different slave masters, and their child being murdered. Arnheid would live on the farm that Thorfinn and Einar were on, until Gardar killed his slave master and came back for her. Gardar would fight repeatedly to save Arnheid from the farm, even getting Thorfinn and Einar involved at one point. Eventually, they would escape by horse, but due to Gardar's injuries from the fight, he would die with Arnheid as the guards from the farm finally caught up to them. Gardar's story is immensely depressing. It shows off the futile nature of revenge, as that's kind of what Gardar and the village were fighting for, and it shows how not every attempt at redemption can be successful. If anything, he made life worse for Arnheid by taking her, as this would lead to the master of the farm brutally beating her until she died of her injuries. Gardar's attempt at redemption was flawed, but in a world such as our own, it was likely the best he could have done. Our final character is Einar. Einar begins his story full of revenge, wishing to kill those who killed his family. Through his time on the farm, however, he becomes close with Thorfinn, someone who is part of the very Viking groups that pillaged his town. Through meeting Thorfinn, Einar learns to forgive those who were forced into war, like how Thorfinn was as a child. Interestingly, we see Einar attempt to take revenge on Thorfinn, trying to kill him in his sleep. He ends up not going through with it, however, becoming more forgiving. Who he doesn't hold sympathy for, however, are the people at the top who are commanding these armies, such as Canute. Einar isn't as stoic or quiet as Thorfinn, but they still hold similar ideals. I'd say the main difference between them is that Thorfinn avoids all forms of violence, meanwhile Einar will perform necessary violence for his goal of peace. And quickly, I just wanted to discuss Askeladd's story of redemption, because I don't really believe that he has one. I see some claim that him killing King Sweyn is an example of redemption, but I would say that's still kind of revenge. Askeladd actually properly achieving his revenge led to his death, and I feel like that's just more evidence that nothing good comes out of revenge. Although Askeladd may have been satisfied with himself dying, he still, died. His life obsessed with revenge led to his death, which is something that Thorfinn successfully avoided. Interestingly, we see that one person going on a path of redemption will often inspire others to do the same. As some simple examples, we see Thors' ideals of peace pass on to Thorfinn, then even if it took a while, we see Thorfinn pass this on to Einar, and we now see Thorfinn and Einar trying to pass this on to Canute, although I'm not sure how well that one's going to go. Despite that, it's important to acknowledge that just one person's kind actions will impact dozens of others. At its core, Vinland Saga is about meaningful change and growing as a person. Through almost all the characters in Vinland Saga, we see themes of two things: revenge and redemption. From Gardar's brutal life to Askeladd's saving of Wales to Thorfinn's transformation from a killing machine to a stoic pacifist, all the arcs in this show have been about someone trying to redeem themselves in the cruel world that is the Viking era of Scandinavia. Thank you for watching.